Hello everyone, Micah Fights with Friends for World Vale Tudo Championship 5. As I've said before, I bought these DVDs years back, like 15 years ago, and I'm just watching them for the first time. I did see the times and stoppages on these fights because I didn't want to waste your guys' time with 30-minute fights, which at 30 minutes, it's a draw. And there is Paul Varelans, the polar bear, who got smashed by Mark Kerr in another World Vale Tudo Championship. He has lost 100 pounds coming into this fight from just 6 months ago. Lost no biting, no eye gouging, no holding the fence, no fish hooking, and 30-minute time limit. Now, they have kind of dispersed the rules as they went. Waldir dos Anjos coming down to the cage. Brazil was light years ahead of the rest of the world at this time for a lot of these at the beginning of World Vale Tudo Championship. This is in February of 1998, so some of these guys had already fought in the UFC. Patrick Smith will be fighting tonight. There is Patrick Smith. Remember him from UFC 1, 2, and 3. All of these fights tonight, I did look on there to see that they all end by finish. So we're not going to watch a fight that doesn't end by a fighter knocking a fighter out, tapping them out, a corner throwing in the towel, and there will be no need for judges tonight. Lucio CARVALHO, and they're kind of doing kind of a parade of fighters here. Capoeira specialist here, Carvalho. And like I've said before, there's these are pretty small arenas. I can't see how big this arena is yet, if it's the same one. Igor Vonchanchyn, he was a legend in Pride. For those who don't know, he has the all-time record for consecutive wins in MMA, and I want to say it was like 43 or 44 at one time of his career in a row. So there, the quarterfinals, Nick Nutter versus Lucio CARVALHO, Paul Varelans versus Waldir Anjos, Patrick Smith, Marco Selva, Tulio Palhares, remember Rosemar Palhares, who fought in the UFC, and a few other ones, and the guy that got himself in trouble with the heel hooks and kind of basically eventually got kicked out of MMA. And all the fighters in the cage here at the beginning. Great shot of all 8 of these fighters, legends of the MMA world. And these guys all very respected now. Nick Nutter making his way down to the cage, an American wrestler. A guy that never did fight in the UFC, fought a lot in Japan, Brazil. All over, and all these guys, they had to fight to qualify for this. It wasn't like the first UFC. They didn't just pull guys, and invite them out of anywhere. Don the Dragon Wilson, the movie star there in the crowd. Of course, he fought in the UFC as well, but very good at movies. He was very good at movies back then. Everybody shaking hands, a little bit of bowing here, and let's get the fight started, though, guys. Get these guys out of the cage. So let's get in there and get down to these fights. Quarterfinals. World Vale Tudo Championships. This one was dubbed Brazil versus the World. And Nick Nutter versus Lucio CARVALHO. That should be the first fight. But one of the amazing stories coming into this event was Paul Varelans, 100 pounds lighter than the last time he had competed just 6 months ago. Remember, he was always like 350, 360. He was that big when he fought in the UFC. Had that battle with Tank Abbott. That's probably how a lot of people remember him. But He fought a who's who of fighters throughout the years and had his shares of victories and defeats. I believe he was 6-5 coming into this one, but kind of a Tyson Fury-esque story there for Paul Varelans. But Nick Nutter and Lucio CARVALHO coming up next here. Crowd cheering for Don the Dragon Wilson. Oh, and look who just comes into the ring here. Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman with Mark Kerr. And apparently they thought he was going to fight that night. He was the UFC champion at the time. I don't know if the UFC would have allowed him to do that. But apparently a lot of people in Brazil thought he was going to fight that night. You can see, there are some rafters here, but this is, like I've said before, a pretty small arena here. Maybe 1,000 people in here. I'm pretty sure it is less, even with those top rafters there. It doesn't look like anybody's allowed up there. I'm just looking at this stadium myself for one of the first times, and there are a couple rows here, but Mark Coleman, that guy is an absolute legend and a super nice guy. If you ever get a chance to talk to Mark Coleman, reach out to him on Twitter. He'll answer you. Nick Nutter in wrestling, 240 pounds, 6 feet tall. Lucio CARVALHO, capoeira and jiu-jitsu expert at 210. And Lucio CARVALHO making his way to the Vale Tudo ring right now. And like I said, this is named Brazil versus the World. So the first fights through in this, I think are all going to be Brazilians versus fighters from other places in the world. And here we go, CARVALHO waiting for his opponent Nick Nutter to make it into the Bellator, or excuse me, I just said Bellator, the World Vale Tudo Championship. And you notice something different tonight for the World Vale Championships. This is the first time they actually have an octagon. They had a lot of problems with those ropes in the past. They have a proper cage this time around, and it is a much different fight. I'm glad they have a cage, because before they didn't have good ring spacers for the ring. They didn't have people on the outside of the ring to hold people if they were to fall out. And that was kind of an issue. A big issue in my mind. And there's Nick Nutter warming up with a young Mark Coleman on the outside. And he is a big American wrestler. About to take on the Brazilian Lucio CARVALHO. Mark Coleman was absolutely huge back then. Remember, this is when the UFC fighters at heavyweight, they used to not have to make 265. So a lot of these guys were very big. But Nick Nutter over here in Brazil, and there is no weight limit for heavyweight here. And finally, our first fight here of World Vale Tudo Championship 5. U.S. versus Brazil. Nick Nutter versus Lucio CARVALHO. Checking in with the corner, and this crowd is pumped. You can tell. This is back in 1998. Like I said, but I mean, these guys were like heroes to them. Even more so than now, and they just went nuts for Nick Nutter, for CARVALHO, for Igor Vonchanchyn when he was coming down. Mark Kerr, Vonchanchyn and Kerr are both going to fight on this card in this tournament tonight. And just waiting for them to start this fight. What's the weight, guys? Let's get it going. But Brazilians always putting up big fights, and you can imagine, I don't know how much these tickets were, but I imagine you probably got a hell of a deal. And here we go. Nick Nutter, Lucio CARVALHO. Nutter in the black, CARVALHO in the white. And they exchange shots early here. Nutter's going to want to take this to the ground immediately. Oh, and he does. Lucio throws a low body kick, and Nick immediately power double leg to the ground. Here's some elbows from the bottom. Remember, 12-6 elbows, kicks to the face, knees to the face. It's all good here. He cannot pull on the trunks, apparently, though. Some of these rules are kind of mysterious as they go through this. As we've seen earlier, Mark Kerr was talked to about kicking with his shoes on. It was never a rule that was stated, as far as I know. But they were kind of learning as they went, I guess, here. And grabbing onto the fence there is Nutter. The referee coming over and grabbing him. That is also not allowed. And they had some issues in those first couple fights with fighters grabbing onto the ropes. And Nick Nutter dropping some bombs here on CARVALHO. That is a big, big dude. And he's got his hands taped. That is just like hitting somebody with a cast. That is worse than the bare knuckle. Because you don't have the glove to pad, but you have all that tape just wrapped around your fist. And, I mean, you're just bashing somebody with a hammer. That's a weapon. CARVALHO trying to keep a hold of Nutter's hands there, pushing on his face. And Nick Nutter trying to pass the guard here. Just an extremely powerful wrestler with big punches. And Capoeira doesn't, they don't teach a lot of ground game in Capoeira. And Luis CARVALHO maybe wishes he would have taken a little more jiu-jitsu right now. In the guard, but Nick is high inside the guard now, landing some big shots here. No weight limits here, so CARVALHO, he's not going to be able to take a lot of those shots, I don't think, from Nick Nutter. He's got to really figure out a way to get out of this and get this back to standing. He may not be big enough really to stop Nick's takedowns, though. There's such a big size difference here. And a couple of shots from Nick Nutter here up against the fence. Oh, big right hand from Nutter, and it's all over. Referee stops the fight there. He is just so much bigger than his opponent, and that's why we have weight classes now. But, man, this is part of MMA. This is part of the history, and I don't want to lose it. For those people that you guys are not, you can't stomach or don't want to see the kicks to the head of a down opponent, the knees to the head of the down opponent, back when there was no weight classes and things, if you can't stomach it, I understand. Maybe go watch another event and watch some new UFC, but this is part of the history of this event and of MMA. So, I try not to deny that it existed. And Nick saying he thought it was going to be a slower match and strategic punches, but he was able to land a couple big bombs just on a guy a lot smaller than him. And no injuries. He's going to go on in the tournament, really in pretty good shape. Didn't put out a lot of energy, just getting the takedown, landing a couple shots here. And next up, you're going to see Paul Varelans taking on Waldir dos Anjos. And remember, Paul Varelans, he had lost 100 pounds coming into this. And there's Mark Coleman. This is right after he had lost the belt, I guess. He had fought Maurice Smith several times. He had lost his belt. That's what he's talking about right now, is he's talking about, I want to get my belt back. Maurice Smith, he said, Maurice Smith kicked my ass, but I'm going to come back and get my belt. Oh, and at the time, and they're talking about, are you going to be ready for Randy Couture? So Couture was in the game at this time. This is real history of the sport, real legends in this one. And if you wonder why I don't have the sound of these fights on as they're watching, this is a reaction video. This is to, to respect the copyright, rules of MMA and the laws of YouTube. So if I commentate these and react to them, then technically they're under the reaction rules. Paul Varelans and Waldir Anjos Vale Tudo coming up. Paul Varelans 285. Waldir Anjos Vale Tudo 180 pounds. So Varelans still going to have a 105-pound advantage. And Waldir dos Anjos coming down here. This guy would be a middleweight today, and he would be a middleweight. And Paul Varelans, he still would not make the heavyweight limit. 285, he'd still be 20 pounds over. And here comes Waldir dos Anjos. And Paul Varelans, he was I believe 6-5 in Vale Tudo at this time. And there is Paul Varelans saying, coming off the loss of 45 kilos, which is about 100 pounds for U.S. fans. And here he comes. Wow, you can see he does look smaller. Obviously, you can see, some loose skin here because he lost all that weight so quickly. But not the big beast he was before. Maybe he's going to have some more cardio here, though. We're going to see, and he said he's stronger than he's ever been. So, I don't know. I find a hard time believing that, though, because they say you cannot lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. But they had some different supplements back then, though, so maybe he ate some horse meat. And look at Dos Anjos, going to look up into the face of Varelans and shows no fear. Even though he's 105 pounds smaller. And here we go. And Dos Anjos coming out with a flying sidekick. Oh, big right hook from Anjos. But Varelans hits him with a big left here. And they're going to exchange. And Varelans got to like this. Oh, big left from Varelans. He says, you really going to strike with me, you dummy? I'm 105 pounds bigger. This might not go well. Nice low leg kick there from Dos Anjos. Varelans checks a leg kick there. A nice body kick for Varelans. Oh, this is an exciting fight. Left hand there from the polar bear. And Dos Anjos doing a good job with those leg kicks. Oh, big right hook from Dos Anjos. Now, you think back to way back in the day, Marco Ruas stopped Paul Varelans with leg kicks. He was just a little bigger than Dos Anjos. Big right hand and a low leg kick. And back then, Varelans was almost 400 pounds. Nice shot there from Varelans. Oh, nice straight right there from Dos Anjos. Using his quickness here. He does not want to be in the clinch of Paul Varelans, though. And there's a guillotine attempt here for Varelans. Oh, big knee there. And Dos Anjos did not like that at all. Body kick here from Varelans. He has been training with some Muay Thai guys before this one. Nice right hand there from Dos Anjos. And a low leg kick. He's got to keep from getting in those boxing wars with Varelans, though. Just landed another shot here. A nice side kick to the body there from Dos Anjos, but he's going to have to really be strategic here. Oh, nice straight left there from Dos Anjos, but Varelans gets through. Another left. Oh, and a big right hook gets through for Varelans. He's starting to find a home for that right hook. That is very, very bad for the middleweight Dos Anjos. Nice body kick there from Varelans. And a low leg kick from the polar bear. Wild overhand right attempted from Dos Anjos. Misses. And it is a little surprising. Dos Anjos has not been hurt in this. I mean, he's been popped by the much bigger guy. A couple big shots and a body kick there from the polar bear. And he's just stalking Dos Anjos. Oh, another big left hook there. Right hand and left hook there. And he cut Dos Anjos up. Big left hook. That was a monster hook there from Varelans. And Varelans just looks to him and says, what's up? What's up? Oh, and they exchange shots here. Oh, and he quits. Wow, he cannot take the big shots. And Waldir Dos Anjos calls it a game. And the polar belt Paul Varelans will go on to the next round of this tournament. Coming up next, Patrick Smith, the American, versus Brazilian Marco Selva. And then after that, Igor Vonchanchyn versus Tulio Palhares. And then we go into the semifinals of this 8-man tournament. And maybe it was something about that cut. Maybe that was bothering Dos Anjos as well. And let's watch the replay here from Varelans towards us. I think this is towards the end of the fight here. Big right hook. A straight right. And Anjos was definitely hitting him the whole time. I can just not imagine how that feels. And there he calls it off. He says, no more. So there's your no moss version in MMA. And they're interviewing Paul Varelans here. Again, I don't have the sound on due to YouTube copyright rules. I'm posting this as a reaction video. That's how I'm able to show the fights up here and react to them. Instead, he wanted to thank Mark Coleman for helping him out. He's dropped about 100 pounds. He doesn't even look like the same person. If you remember Paul Varelans from the UFC and from here in World Vale Tudo, they asked him how heavy he was here, and he says he's 280 down from about 380. So, wow. And up next, Patrick Smith, the late, great Patrick Smith, 225 pounds of Colorado. Marco Selva, 190-pound street fighter. And as I'm watching these, Patrick Smith just died less than a month ago. And he had won and lost some fights in the UFC by this point. Had some impressive fast knockouts. Had some times where he got submitted, though. Like in that first UFC against Frank Shamrock. But he has owned his skills. He owned his skills over the years. And Patrick Smith said, if I can't win this show, maybe I shouldn't be fighting anymore. I don't think that's a accurate evaluation of his skills. I mean, there's so many beasts in this. Like I said, Paul Varelans, Igor Vonchanchyn, Mark Kerr, just Nick Nutter. That guy's a really tough guy, tough wrestler. And Marcos Silva, street fighter out of Brazil, will be coming out here soon. And this broadcast, if you're wondering why, they show no time. They don't really show the records. They don't even really talk about the records a whole lot. She kind of had to do your own research back then. And I don't know where you would do it. Because it was just the eve of the internet back here in 1998. February 98. But Patrick Smith, heavier than when he fought in the UFC. 225. I want to say he was under 200 in the UFC, but he is a fast starter. Look for Patrick Smith to come out very, very quickly. And they just said Marco Selva has not fought in 10 years. That's not a good sign. And here comes Patrick Smith. Oh, nice right hand from Smith. Catches Selva coming in. And Patrick Smith immediately grabs Selva around by the waist, and he's got the mount, and he's raining down the ground and pound. Patrick Smith has got some fast hands. Big elbows. 4 big elbows there from the top. Right hands from Patrick Smith. Oh, more big elbows here from Patrick Smith. Wow. Oh, and he lets go of the hands again. Beautiful shots here from Patrick Smith on top. Selva trying to escape out the back door. And Smith says, fine, get on up. Oh, wow, Selva lands some shots. Oh, right hook and a right uppercut from the American kickboxer Patrick Smith. And Selva is literally on the run here. Nice body kick from Selva, but a good low leg kick there from Patrick Smith. Smith hands down, both guys hands down, but body kick there for Selva as this crowd chants for Selva, but a big right hook from Patrick Smith. And Smith is just stalking him. Selva clinches. Knee to the body there for Smith. Oh, big right hand and uppercut there for Patrick Smith. Oh, I'm not sure what happened. I think Smith broke his hand there. Or they're not wearing gloves. And Selva with some combinations there. Oh, now Smith throwing with open hands. As you've seen this a lot on these World Vale Tudos. You've seen a lot of guys move to the open hand strikes because they broke their hands so many times. Oh, that was a brutal low leg kick there from Smith. Though, and a big elbow from Smith, standing elbow and a right hand. Patrick Smith really putting it all together tonight. And there's a flurry. 1-2 there from Patrick Smith. This is impressive. Oh, beautiful low leg kick. Goes down and comes back up. Patrick Smith. Oh, big right uppercut and a right hook. What, man, his hands are so fast. Selva with about 5-6 uppercuts in there, though. Wow, Selva with a nice knee to the body there. Or Smith with the knee, excuse me. Smith, handful of cage here. That is against the rules to grab the fence. Patrick Smith, he says, fine then, let's get it back in the center. Smith really shaking that hand, and I'm sure it's broke. It's really hurting him. And he kept on throwing it, though. Selva slapping with the open hand here. Low leg kick. Lands for Patrick Smith. Smith stalking him. Selva waiting to counter. And Smith is, running leg kick there from Patrick Smith. And Selva starting to limp here from those leg kicks. Another big left hand, or big leg kick. That right hand is really hurting Patrick Smith's. Selva still not hurt, though. He is fighting courageously. Oh, that was a brutal leg kick. That really caved Selva's leg, and he's really having a hard time walking now. And Patrick Smith knows it. Selva's a wounded animal. He's a dangerous wounded animal. He's a wounded animal. Oh, big shot there from Smith. Another low leg kick. He somewhat checks that. Oh, big combination upstairs from Patrick Smith. And Selva on the run again. And here comes Smith. As we said, he is shaking that. Oh, spinning back fist attempt from Selva. That was unheard of for the time. And a slapping attempt there for Selva. But Selva hadn't fought since '88. So I'm impressed with the spinning back fist. Nice low leg kick there from Patrick Smith. Selva landing those front kicks. Oh, head kick from Smith. Selva is one tough SOB, though. Front kick to the body there from Selva, but another combination from Smith. Patrick Smith, just so impressive on the feet tonight. And that's going to be it. Selva says, no mas. Patrick Smith shaking that right hand, probably broken, but he kept throwing it. And he was a tough man tonight. And he goes on to the semifinals. Patrick Smith hugging his opponent there. Good show of sportsmanship there. And Patrick Smith will move on to face another one of these monsters in this tournament. Speaking of monsters, we're going to see Igor Vonchanchyn versus Tulio Palhares coming up next. And like I said, Patrick Smith he moves on to the next round of this tournament, but may have a broken hand. And they're going to interview Pat Smith here. They said, congratulations. Yeah, he might not want to shake your hand, especially at that right. And he just says, I'm hot. I'm hot. He says, all you guys in Brazil know I'm just learning how to grapple and survive, moving on to my second fight. All right, and Patrick Smith going back to the locker room to get ready for a semifinals match. But here is the kickboxing and sambo savant Igor Vonchanchyn coming up against Tulio Palhares, a Chinese kickboxer. And this guy has very fast hands, Tulio Palhares. Very good Chinese boxing career. And I always see all these guys working out on the beach. I'm like, man, makes me want to move like right on a beach. And that's Vonchanchyn there working out, though. And here he comes. The beast making it down there, Igor Vonchanchyn. Like I said earlier, at one time, he won, I believe it was 44 MMA fights consecutively. Fought in Pride, fought in World Vale Tudo, fought in kickboxing before that, of course. As he awaits his opponent, the Chinese boxer, Tulio Palhares. Here comes Tulio Palhares down to the cage. And just like Varelans did, Igor Vonchanchyn is going to have a pretty good-sized weight advantage against Palhares. Palhares just about 180 pounds. And we'll see what he can do, if anything, to overcome that size advantage of Vonchanchyn. And if you haven't seen Vonchanchyn fight, he likes head kicks. He's a very good striker with very good takedown defense. And Vonchanchyn on the left of the screen if you're watching. Palhares on the right. Palhares goes for the body kick, misses there. Varelans moving forward. Nice low leg kick there, or excuse me, from Vonchanchyn. Low leg kick from Igor Vonchanchyn. And it looks like it might be an exchange of leg kicks here early. Oh, nice leg kick there from Vonchanchyn. Inside leg kick from Palhares. Oh, Palhares misses a big left hook here. Palhares has really fast hands, probably much faster than Vonchanchyn's, but Vonchanchyn's got that power. He's very skilled. Nice low leg kick there from Palhares. And Vonchanchyn stalking here. Oh, beautiful left hand there from Vonchanchyn. Doesn't take much without these gloves on. We've watched bare knuckle boxing as it's become big here recently in the States. This was bare knuckle MMA. Oh, big overhand right attempt from Varelans, and immediately Palhares going to get the takedown. Or Vonchanchyn. I keep calling him Varelans because he fought earlier, but Vonchanchyn might be looking for a guillotine here. Great job of crawling to get back to the fence here by Vonchanchyn. He just wants to get this back to standing. Vonchanchyn had a legendary takedown defense over his MMA career, especially in Pride. And just a reminder, not only is it, knees and kicks to the head of a down opponent are allowed, whatever supplements you can think of, these guys were allowed. And there, Palhares lands a knee to the groin. And I had a question whether shots to the groin were legal, and it looks like they are. Varelans just landed a knee to the groin there. And Vonchanchyn, he's burning out his arm on that guillotine. He's going to let it go. But he's able to stand up. Powerful man. Knee to the body there from Palhares. And Vonchanchyn grabbing a handful of fence there. Referee had to come around and slap his hand there. Shots behind the head there from Vonchanchyn. I don't think they care about that. Headbutt from Vonchanchyn. Oh, another knee to the groin there from Palhares. I think the referee did say, he did say something about it, so I don't know what the agreement was. The commentators here, they didn't know either. It's a weird situation where the rules really aren't clear going into each bout. Vonchanchyn landing these shots to the back of the head. It almost seems like with some of these referees, sometimes it just comes down to ethics. Maybe this referee feels like he doesn't want to see knees to the groin, so he said stop. And a headbutt there from Palhares. And been in the clinch here for a minute. I imagine Varelans is going to try to break this here soon so he can get back to the center of the cage. Oh, big knees, 3 big knees, and a knee from the other side here from Palhares. Oh, he is really punishing Vonchanchyn with the knees. This is about 6-7 in a row there. And he's going to break them. So like I said, ever-evolving rules here in World Vale Tudo. I'm not going to argue with the breaks for lack of action. Back to the center of the cage. And Palhares was definitely getting the best of that in the clinch, though. Oh, straight left there for Palhares. And Vonchanchyn stalking. Oh, nice body kick there from Palhares. Vonchanchyn, he can be very patient, and then he will explode with one of those big head kicks. Or one of those big right hooks. Vonchanchyn a little hesitant. I mean, he may be hurting from those knees to the groin. A couple of shots there, barely miss for Vonchanchyn. Those knees to the groin, they have to be bothering him. Nice low leg kick from Vonchanchyn, and he gets popped by Palhares. Vonchanchyn continuing to move forward, but Palhares goes for the takedown, and Vonchanchyn able, and I don't know what the deal was there. Apparently, Tulio Palhares has quit. And these fans, obviously, you know, and justifiably upset. And I'm not sure exactly what happened here. Vonchanchyn can't be happy to win that way. He was just getting loosed up. Neither guy really seemed to be winded. And, I mean, he'd been having his moments. He was landing knees, a pretty even fight. Knees to the groin and the legs. And I really don't know what happened. Let's see if we can see something happen here. I don't think he caught that punch on an elbow. They clashed there. Puts his shoulder down. I don't know if maybe he pulled his shoulder out or something. Just a strange move here from Palhares. Very, very surprising. Obviously, and they're going to talk to Mark Kerr there in the crowd. WVC 3 champion. Oh, and he says, I love Brazil. They love the fighters more than in America, Kurt said, at least back then. In America, I think Americans really love the fighters nowadays. This was really early days of the sports, though. And he's saying SEG Sports was saying at the time that he had breached the contract. So Mark Kerr was in lawsuit litigations with SEG at the time. Unfortunately, that was something that was going on back then. Randy Couture talked about it with me in his interview on this show. He's talked about it throughout the years. He had some issues, and Dana was involved then. But Nick Nutter and Paul Varelans both moved on to the next round, though. They will be the next fight here. And he says it's just a matter of putting everything together and being able to fight the best. It's funny, he can't go fight even in another country. It's just some international courts there or something. And you can see Mark Kerr. I mean, he was just a damn specimen. Or Mark Coleman, excuse me. Back in the day, Mark Kerr. Wow. And they're saying now he was scheduled to fight tonight. That's why I was surprised. And SEG stepped in through that lawsuit out there, sent a copy of that lawsuit to the owners here. And there is the semifinals. Nick Nutter versus Paul Valherens. And they have an alternate coming in. Patrick Smith had a broken hand. So he will not go on. They're going to bring in an alternate. Elias Rodrigues will be the replacement against Igor Vonchanchyn in the semifinals here. And Don the Dragon Wilson just, describing one of his movies that was coming up there, and I don't think he ever did come back after this. But just talking about an action movie he had coming up. And the next fight coming in here, Nick Nutter versus Paul Varelans. Two huge guys. Nick Nutter came through with the power double leg in that first match. There you could see Mark Coleman on the outside of the cage with him. What a guy to train you. And the polar belt, Paul Varelans versus Nick Nutter. That's anyone. And Nutter waiting for Varelans to come down. And Varelans may have lost another 5 pounds to add to that 100 in his last match. Landing some big knees to the head of his opponent. And Varelans, this is not a big rest for either one of these guys. A little longer, of course, for Nutter. He was in the first match of the night. Varelans, not much of a rest at all. And they have to fight 3 times tonight to become the championship, to become the champion of World Valley Championships 5. And we finally hear the music for the polar bear Paul Varelans coming out with some smoke. He's here and he looks serious. This was all supposed to be Brazil versus the world, but the 2 U.S. guys made it to this round. So now it's going to be U.S. versus U.S. here. Paul Varelans, Nick Nutter. Big heavyweight fighters. They shake hands, and Varelans, he might struggle with the wrestling of Nick Nutter. He's a strong dude, and there you go.